Meeting the extra assembly to order. Madam Clerk, please do a roll call.
Mr. Honeman.
Here.
Mr. Steele.
Here.
Ms. Demboski.
Present.
Mr. Flynn.
Present.
Mr. Trainey.
Here.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Mr. Evans.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Starr has asked to be excused. Ms. Johnston. Here. Mr. Hall.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Mr. Hall, could you lead us in the pledge, please, sir? Thank you, sir. There are no minutes of previous meetings. Madam Clerk, I'll give you a moment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I hope that the members can tell that there's something different with the sound. We can hear each other. We've had some logistical issues that we need to review tonight. First, we've got these temporary mics because we have our normal audio system is not working. You have to press the red button to speak. The mic is going to show a red light when it's on. Only 4 people can have their mics on at the same time. After 30 seconds of not speaking, your mic is going to go off. At the podium, the public will need to press the button to speak, and we'll have some staff there to assist you. So I also want to let the members know this is just temporary. It is for sale. They've told us they'd sell it to us if you like it. This morning, we didn't think that this meeting would happen in this fashion. We didn't think it'd be telecast on GCI. We thought your voting would be roll call. We were thinking you were going to have to shout. But a handful of people who normally operate behind the scenes made a couple of miracles happen by working straight through over the weekend and all day yesterday and today. And I'd really like us to thank them. First and foremost is John Crabb with the AFD Video Center and his team, including Molly McCoy and the library construction contractors and their subs. They set up temporary video lines and the speakers in the chamber, so the meeting is being broadcast on GCI, and we have closed captioning. Greg Steininger with MOA IT worked to get this temporary microphone system set up so we can hear each other. And Nelson Leoncio from MOA IT came and tested the meeting manager. We found out like about 3 o'clock that we were going to be able to have a meeting, and Nelson came over and tested us and has us up and running, and you can have voting online. John Clark, Jim Przeski, and Alan Kajowski, who are managing the library construction, made this assembly meeting a priority. And I thank all of them and all of the other folks who really made this happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item in business is Mayor's report. Mr. Mayor?
Well, I was going
How was
to
Juneau going?
Juneau is far away, in a galaxy far, far away. I wanted to echo Madam Clerk's comments about the great work that people did to make sure that this meeting was operational and sound-worthy. What's going on in Juneau, I suspect, will go on for quite some time. So we might have an update at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next item in business, Assembly Chair's report. Just a period of a lot of change. As you know, we seat our new members, reorganize our next meeting. So it should be an interesting meeting. Always is when we got change. Moving down to committee reports. Mr. Hall, I want to go with you first, sir.
Unfortunately, this being my last opportunity to report, I have no report. Thank you.
Ditto.
Mr. Peterson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No report this evening, but I will be back here next week and the week after that.
Mr. Evans, sir.
No report.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Flynn. Ms. Dembowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Boy, these mics are sensitive, aren't they? I apologize. Everybody gets to hear my squeaky voice and surround sound. Mr. Chair, the Community and Economic Development Committee will have a meeting tomorrow morning from 10:30, is it 10 or 10:30? 10 to 11:30. There we go, we got it. And that will be over at the Permit Center, which is 4700 Elmore. We have a draft AO that we've already discussed once. We're going to be discussing again. It has to do with residential use variances. So if anybody's interested in that topic, they should show up. Additionally, the long-awaited work session, it's a joint work session with Planning and Zoning and the Assembly, will be held on Thursday. That's from 11:30 to 1. And that is going to be at City Hall in the Mayor's Conference Room. I highly suggest everyone come to that work session. The topic is an interesting one, but a little bit complicated. So I think the work session will be helpful. So hopefully the new members will be in attendance too. And with that, Mr. Chair, that's all I have for reports, but I would like to make a disclosure, if I may.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, we have item 14B, which is a letter of agreement between IAFF and the municipality of Anchorage. This has to do with staffing on four-man engine crews, and it looks like some paramedic units. Mr. Chair, though my husband is a member of IAFF Local 1264 and is an Anchorage fire captain, I don't think my husband's role in this is significant. I don't see how it'll impact him at all. So I think I can be fair and impartial, but I do make the disclosure so you can make any ruling.
Thank you, ma'am. We're going to be consistent with our last ruling. You are directed to participate. We're not letting you out of being part of this.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no committee report, but we did have, we were trying to find a spot for the Enterprise Committee to reschedule or to schedule a meeting, and it's still up in the air, but it looks like it's going to be, it's not on the 21st, which is where it's on my calendar at the moment. The 14th is where it was originally. So we've got conflicts, and we will reschedule it, and hopefully we can get some of the new members to come as well.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whoa, you're right. Stay back from it. Mr. Chairman, the last committee meeting of the Public Safety Committee, for me as chair anyway, will be this Friday, 15th of April, where we have a fairly busy agenda, as we typically do. And so we would like to, I guess, start with going over the Alaska Shield exercise that was conducted on April 1st. And we have a variety of new business topics. One that, I'm dishonest, I regret I didn't get a chance to call you this morning. Late last night I spoke with the municipal manager about a recruitment issue at the Anchorage Police Department and Fire Department. So he would like some time on the new business part of the agenda, if that's possible, to squeeze him in. I promise you we'll have fun for my last meeting as chair, and then Mr. Evans will hopefully will take it. Mr. Evans, I'll give you this disclosure. You don't have to meet on Fridays. It can be any day of the week that you choose. We were working Wednesdays at noon, and we were out of here most of the time, but we were back at the City Hall. And once the election matters are all squared away, you'll be able to pick the conference room downstairs. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the pleasure and honor to serve as your Public Safety Committee Chair, and this being our last full meeting where we can participate on agenda items. I expect next meeting next week will be rather quick for myself and a couple of my colleagues. Thank you.
You're always invited to come back and sit in the audience if you want, Paul. We'll take your attendance here.
Will do, sir.
You've done a great job as our Public Safety Chairman, so thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Next item in business we've got is addendum to the agenda. Ms. Gray Jackson, make a motion, please.
Move to incorporate the addendum to the agenda.
Second.
Okay. We'll now go down the agenda for those items that pull for further discussion. Mr. Hall.
Yes, sir. I'd like to pull 9F1.
Should we move to
Get it written down. Is that all, sir?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston, ma'am.
9A1.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pull 9A2. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Evans, sir.
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I just have to ask you, anything, Mr. Flynn? Okay.
No, thank you.
Mr. Mofke, anything?
I'd like to pull 9F4.
What?
9F4?
9F4?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What? It's, the clerk reminds us that's for introduction. Was there some reason you wanted to pull it? Because it's just for introduction.
Actually, I'd like to postpone it until the next meeting.
Well, it's-
I've got some items on there I would like to talk to
When's
Animal
it set,
Control.
the 26th?
Yes.
It's already scheduled to come up at our next meeting, on the 26th. Did you want to delay it beyond then? I'm trying to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, I would like to because I think I've got to work some things out with folks.
Okay. Then let's just write it down there and let's pull it. We'll discuss it. Okay? Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for reading 9 Alpha 3 on the addendum. And Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I know I've made most of the body, except for Mr. Starr, aware. I do have a late on the table.
Yeah, we'll get to there in a second, sir.
And is that under the...
That's the next motion.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay? Anything else,
Mr. Chairman,
sir?
I think for the purposes of correcting incorrect public hearing dates, recommend pulling 9F7, 9F8, and 9F10.
Sir, hold on. Ms. Gray Jackson, I think it was already done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you,
Ma'am.
Mr. Abbott, but our clerk advised us earlier in the day that that was already taken care of.
According to the clerk, it's already been corrected.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Abbott?
Okay, I mean, the published agenda says that the public hearing for those items are tonight, so if...
Let me check with the clerk. Madam Clerk, did we clean that up?
Through the chair, the public hearing dates are corrected online, and technically, the public hearing has to be published 7 days in advance, which it wasn't, so the public hearings can't be tonight, but they will be published tomorrow for the 26th. The online agenda has been corrected.
Mr. Abbott?
Good enough for me.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
I made an error. I don't think we need to pull 9A3. It's just a matter of as long as it adopts and passes. Unless there's
So you
question.
don't want to pull 9A3?
That's correct.
Okay. Let's go back to those items that were pulled. We pulled 9A1, 9A2, did not pull 9A3, pulled 9F1 and 9F4. Is there anything else in the body that needs pulled on the consent agenda? If not, we're going to vote as soon as I can get it to work. Or we'll go manual, ma'am, whichever you'd like.
Let me see.
I know, ma'am.
We'll get Nelson to come over, but let's do you want to ask if there's any objection? And we'll see if
Is there any objection to the approval of the items with the exception of those items that were pulled for a little further discussion by the body? Is there any objection to approval of those? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk. The body's approved everything with the exception of those items that we listed down that are pulled for further discussion.
Okay, Mr.
Okay?
All right.
Ms. Gray Jackson, make a motion to accept laid on table items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to incorporate late on the table items.
Second.
Is there, okay, moved and seconded. Paul, you're the only one that indicated you've got something to lay on the table.
Only because I was so late in the printing, I did not have an AIM, so I don't know if there's any need for discussion, but I don't see, of course, yet to be numbered resolution, as well as I suspect it'll be under 9 Alpha 4 under the order of things.
9A4.
Since it's a resolution.
Okay. This one is a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly supporting the University of Alaska UA Board of Regents resolution and the University of Alaska Anchorage position regarding Senate Bill 174, an act relating to the regulation of firearms and knives by the University of Alaska. That's the one you want to introduce, Mr. Holdren?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Does anybody wants to second that one? Second by Ms. Gray Jackson, Mr. Peterson, ma'am. Okay. Then we also have, for Mr. Flynn, AO 2016-34S, an ordinance amending municipal code, new code, section 21.05.070, section 21.07.020, section 21.07.040, and section 21.07.110 to address specific issues identified during initial implementation of new Title 21 and waiving planning and zoning commission review.
We'll make that 9F11.
9F11. Okay.
Okay, great. No, we don't.
9F11. The next one is from Ms. Dembowski. It's AM 223-2016 from Ms. Dembowski. AO 2016-35, an ordinance regarding the measuring of separation distance between marijuana establishments and protected land uses in Igor Chugaki River, and waiving planning and zoning commission review. Do you have the number on this one, ma'am?
Yes, just 1 second, Mr. Chair. This is going to be Ms. Dembowski's. It's going to be 13C1.
Okay. And then we have 9F14. An ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly. This is AO 2016-46, ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly waiving the fee for an application to amend the zoning map for 72.66 acres of land described as the northeast one-half of the southeast one-fourth of Section 25, Township 12N, R32, SM Alaska, accepting the northwest one-fourth and northwest one-fourth of southeast one-fourth of Section 25, T12N, R3W, SM Alaska, and Lot 2, Ferguson Jones subdivision.
Okay. We have one correction. Ms. Gray Jackson, what item number is that on the agenda?
I think it's 13A. 13B. 13B.
13B?
Yep.
So
we doing that one?
So we need to correct this one.
Okay, this one is 13B4. It's AO 2016-43S, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, new code, Section 20.05.070, Section 21.07.020, Section 21.07.040, and Section 21.07.110 to address specific issues identified during initial implementation of new Title 21 and waiving planning and zoning commission review. And that's from Mr. Flynn.
Great. Okay.
So you straight on that?
Now we need to know if anybody wants to pull any of those.
Does anybody want to pull any of those items? Anybody in the body want to pull those items? Ms. Dembowski, do you want to pull any of those?
Yes, I just have to do it. I need to pull 9A4. I think Mr. Honeman wants to speak to it too, so that'll be helpful.
9A4, okay?
So then we need to vote on the remainder, and you want to do no objection.
Mr.
Is there any
Chairman?
objection on the remainder of the items?
No, sir, but it was yet unnumbered resolution. I don't know if Madam Clerk wants to make sure we have that if it
We
is.
know which one it is.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, is there any objection on the rest of the items other than the one that was pulled for a little further discussion? Ask unanimous, not seeing any objection, Madam Clerk. Let it reflect that other than 9A4 that was pulled for further discussion, we approved them. Okay? Move to approve the consent agenda, Ellie.
Move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay. Should we take a vote on that? All technical problem. Is there any objection to approval of the consent agenda except for those items that were pulled for further discussion? This is not on the addendum, not laid on the table, and this is just on the consent agenda. Just consent agenda. We'll pick up your stuff in a second, Amy. Okay, that was approved, Madam Clerk. Now let's go through those items that are pulled for a little further discussion. Okay. The first one is on the agenda. It's item 9A1. It's Resolution AR 2016-98, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing April 2016 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month and encouraging the residents of Anchorage to support community efforts to raise awareness and work together to eliminate sexual assault crimes in our community. That was pulled by...
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Ask unanimous. See no objection, that's approved. Is somebody presenting and somebody reading?
I'm reading.
Mr. Evans is reading, and who's presenting? Ms. Johnston? Who's here to receive? Is anybody here to receive the resolution on sexual assault? Ma'am, I don't think there's anybody here. Would you read it, Mr. Evans, please?
Sure. Whereas sexual assault is a crime of power and control that affects the lives of women, men, and children and can devastate individuals, families, and communities. And whereas sexual assault is a public health concern that subjects victims to debilitating immediate and long-term physical, psychological, social, and financial issues and is a threat to critical societal structures, and the cost in terms of lost contributions, achievements, and income cannot be fully measured. And whereas the National Sexual Violence Resource Center's 2016 campaign focuses on the building blocks of prevention by communicating how individuals, communities, and the private sector can take action to promote safety, respect, and equality. And whereas the State of Alaska Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault supports the preventative efforts of shelters for victims of domestic and sexual violence statewide by engaging in a wide range of programs, including the Green Dot Alaska program, Coaching Boys into Men, and Girls on the Run, and the 4th R curriculum in schools. And whereas the University of Alaska participated in a Title IX campus climate survey to generate an overall understanding of campus safety, education, and services, and outreach options to improve prevention programs and support to victims of sexual violence and harassment. And whereas Standing Together Against Rape will support 2 local events in April to raise awareness and focus on the prevention of sexual assault and gender violence. By hosting Walk a Mile in Her Shoes this Saturday, April 16th, 2016, and by participating in International Denim Day, Wednesday, April 27th, 2016. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honors community members and volunteers across the state who are networking to meet the challenge of raising awareness for the prevention and elimination of crimes of sexual assault in our community and recognizes April 2016 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 12th day of April 2016.
Next item in front of us is item 9. It's on the addendum to the agenda. It's item 9A2. It's Resolution AR 2016-105, resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly celebrating the designation of April 18, 2016 as National Lineman Day and recognize the vital role public service of electric utility personnel. Ask unanimous consent on that item.
Move to approve.
Second.
See no objection, that is approved. Who is reading it? Pete, did you pull it?
I'm reading.
Who's presenting? Okay. Everybody that's here for that, come on down front. And if you want, you can be here to take your pictures going that way. Just come on down here.
Okay, we have a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly celebrating the designation of April 18th, 2016 as National Lineman Day and recognizing the vital public service of electric utility personnel. Whereas the vocation of a line worker is steeped in personal, family, and professional tradition where service, safety, reliability, and sacrifice are fundamental. And whereas line workers are dedicated to public servants who answer the call of duty 24 hours a day, every day of the year, performing their vital work in often the harshest weather conditions. And whereas the essential services provided by Municipal Light and Power, Chugach Electric Association, and Matanuska Electric Association line workers, together with other employees and utilities, play a vital role in our community. And whereas line workers stand ready to be first responders in keeping the power on and protecting public safety. And whereas national, state, and municipal governing bodies across the United States have joined the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association in designating April 18th, 2016 as National Lineman Appreciation Day. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Anchorage Assembly thanks and recognizes all electric utility employees, but particularly line workers, in celebrating National Lineman Day. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 12th day of April, 2016.
Go ahead, make sure you push the right button on there. You've got the thing lit.
The
So go
light's
ahead.
on, so I must be doing something right. First, like to thank the Assembly for the recognition. We have linemen here representing CEA, MEA, and MLMP, so they cover all of the city of Anchorage. As the resolution said, these are the first responders 24/7. When your power is out, they are there regardless of the weather, regardless of the danger. They are there to make sure that your power is back on. We are blessed to have this many folks here to see, they all left. It was hard enough to get them to actually walk down here, so we are blessed to have them all in the back of the room. But thank you very much for this recognition.
Go ahead, sir.
Through the chair, my name is Mike Hodson. I'm the business manager of the IBW and representing all these folks that work for the employment of these three utilities. My family has a history of being linemen. I am one myself. This means a lot to me personally, but I'd also like to thank all the men and women that do this work out here. They truly are community heroes, and it is quite an honor to have this day be put in our honor and be commemorated in observance for their active duties. So thank you very much.
We'll stay up here. We have a few comments and questions for you.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you so much for the efforts you guys put in to making sure power is there when we throw the switch. We assume when we throw a switch, the light comes on. But it's all these people back there that have to watch the lines and make sure they fix the problem. and that just happened by accident. My thanks to everybody that puts life on the line to check the wires. Thank you. Mr. Flynn, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not that we don't have a whole slew of distinguished folks here tonight, but are there any linemen here tonight who happen to coach high school wrestling in the late 80s? Would you come forward, sir? Would you kindly identify yourself for the record, sir?
My name is Dante Kelly, and I used to coach Pat. He used to weigh about 102 pounds. He was a scrappy guy, but he grew up to be a good guy. And I know Dick also, he recruited me into
Dante, I haven't seen you in years. It's good to see you again.
And I know a few of you guys, and Paul, and I remember Ernie Hall. He used to do some work with my dad or something, so I've been here a long time.
Well, Mr. Kelly, it is a delight to see you again, sir. Thank you for coming down tonight.
No
And Dante, do you have any pictures of him as scrawny 70, 80 pound? Let us know. We'd like to have the
I'll
photos.
find some in his singlet.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Holman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was again a pleasure on my last official meeting here with work to do, to be able to present that. So thank you, Madam Clerk and Mr. Chairman, for allowing that. Secondly, I again think I mentioned last year, full disclosure, my son actually happens to be one of those guys that climbs a little lower down the pole, and you guys, I think, affectionately term and call them dinglings. And so thanks for taking care of my dingling. He's actually a safety officer now for Sturgeon, so he's trying to keep people safe. And it is a pretty tough job, and it's also a very dangerous job. And I know that there's been a couple of losses in the industry here, even in Anchorage as it goes. So a lot of people threaten to live off the grid. You guys keep the grid going, and thank God for you.
Mr. Steele, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You guys do some risky things working with electricity. I was a pole lineman a long time ago, but I was only running field wire, telephone field wire in Vietnam. But didn't particularly like being up on poles in Vietnam. But anyway, I appreciate what you do day in and day out. My power, when it does go out, which is very infrequently, you guys get it on in a timely manner, and I certainly appreciate it.
Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really great to see so many of you here this evening. And I was a lineman for 3 years in New Jersey. Just kidding. Anyway, I want you to know how much I appreciate, and I'm sure the rest of the citizens in our community, the fact that you keep the lights on. It means a lot to all of us. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you guys for all you do. Appreciate you being here. Take care, sir. Next item in front of us is laid on the table item. It's 9A4. It's AR 2016. Did we ever put a number on that? No. Okay. No numbered. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly supporting the University of Alaska UA Board of Regents. Resolution and the University of Alaska Anchorage position regarding Senate Bill 174, an act relating to the regulation of firearms and knives by the University of Alaska. Mr. Holman.
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I apologize to my colleagues. There's been a lot of iterations, and I think the legislature has been contacted by many from within the...
Paul, let's wait a second, okay? Right. Ladies, gentlemen, could you go out the door? I appreciate you, but we need to continue the meeting. Thank you. Mr. Holman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been many contacts or attempts to contact the legislature for some amendments on Senate Bill 174. And this particular resolution, be it laid on the table, and I apologize for lateness, is as a result of simply trying to affirm, if you will, the authority granted by the state of Alaska, by the Alaska law to the Board of Regents, and their, if you will, their voice on setting policy to the university statewide, and in particular the University of Alaska Anchorage, where there have been both resolution by the Union of Students of the University of Alaska Anchorage, and as well as the UAA staff and directors at the university. So one thing I wanted to make sure it is people know, and my colleagues and the public to know, is this is not a resolution that speaks anything to do with the law relating to carrying concealed, nor does it even go as far as to hamper with or tamper with the Second Amendment and the rights of carrying and keep and bear arms. So this is simply a resolution, if you will, that supports the Board of Regents' position and their authority.
Other discussion from Assembly members? Ms. Dembowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't often weigh in when it comes to resolutions that come forward, but in this case I feel like I need to. First, I want to say that I wholeheartedly support Senator Kelly's bill, but I don't think that is relevant, honestly. And I'm going to give a little history lesson here, so I'll digress for just a second. I can't vote in favor of the resolution against SB 174 for a number of reasons. As municipal lawmakers, we need to consider and understand the legal background of what needs to be decided by the legislature, the Alaska court system, and the university before we jump into the ring with both arms swinging. In Alaska, under Article 13, Section 1 of the state constitution, the voters have no power to propose constitutional amendments. Only the Alaska legislature, by a 2/3 supermajority vote in both houses, can do that. In 1994, Article 1, Section 19 of the Constitution added the sentence, "The individual right to keep and bear arms shall not be denied or infringed by the state or a political subdivision of the state." So what does that mean? What are the federal constitutional limits, if any, to the individual right to keep and bear arms? How does the state weigh in? 15 years ago, the current Chief Judge, which is Judge Manheimer, wrote the decision, and in there, the conversation was determined that supporting Alaska legislators and opposing Alaska legislators both agreed if the 1994 measure was enacted, all firearm laws would have to survive a compelling state interest or strict scrutiny analysis based on his dissent in Wilson versus State on this principle. So the point being, now more than 20 years later, we're basically at square one, and the very thing that the 1994 amendment requires is a case-by-case scrutiny. So, I think by us jumping in this fight right now, I think it's not placed appropriately. I think this is in the legislature's purview, and I don't think it's appropriate for us to be pushing this forward at this moment. Thank you.
Mr. Evans, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have all the information that Ms. Dembowski had there, but I think I'm basically saying the same thing, that this is obviously a fairly controversial issue. The Senate was taking testimony on it today, I even believe. Since
the House was today.
Was it the House? But, we're not taking testimony on this. I've said this not just to this resolution, but just about every resolution we've tried to pass or did pass that it weighed on state issues. We're not getting information. We're not having work sessions on this. We're not being informed about this issue. So I'm generally opposed to us weighing in on these issues, and I'd be opposed to this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Ms. Gray-Jackson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one real quick comment. I really appreciate Ms. Dembowski's comments and also Mr. Evans. But for any of us to think that we don't have a responsibility to weigh in on state issues that affect our community, I'm sorry, but in my opinion, that's incorrect. We have every right to do that. This affects our community on any issue that is before the state. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Working again, so we're going to do a voice. We're going to do a voice now that I turn the microphone back on. Any other comments from somebody? Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to be supporting this resolution, and I believe Mr. Honeman, the fact that he actually works on campus on a daily basis and has been there for the last couple of years on a daily basis, has got a pretty good idea how the university system should work. And part of the job of the Board of Regents is to make decisions like this. And I actually think the legislature is overstepping their authority in this particular instance. And so I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Mr. Hall, sir.
Yes, I will not be a yes vote on this, basically by the fact that as an individual, I would be an ardent supporter, but my voice speaks for the community, and I don't feel that I've had the input necessary to make that decision, so I will be a no vote.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Any other comments from Assembly members? If not, please vote. A yes will approve it, a no will not. I count 5 to 5. That measure fails to pass the body. The vote is 5 to 5. Have to have 6 to pass the body. We are now continuing on to the regular agenda. We're at item 9F1, Ordinance AO 2016-38, an ordinance amending the Municipal Code, Title 15, Environmental Protection, to amend the provisions relating to Housing Maintenance and Occupation Code, amending Section 4.40.150 regarding appeals. Thank you, Ms. Jonathan. Mr. Hall, you pulled that.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Third. Mr. Hall.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I pull that to change the hearing date on that to May the 24th.
Second.
The motion in front of us is to change the public hearing to May 24th. As one of the sponsors, I've got no problem with that at all.
Yes.
And I want to have some work sessions before we get there.
I think it's imperative that we do it. We're going to have at least 3 new members of this body voting on it. It's in excess of 30-page document, and I think there's individuals in the community that need time to review it. You're going to be dealing with first quarter budget revisions. Your cup runneth over. So I think it would be very timely to postpone it to that date. Thank you.
Well, it's been 4 decades since this issue was last addressed, so we do need to take some time to look at it before we deal with it. Is there any objection to approval of this change in the hearing date? Madam Clerk, we've got no problem with that, so it's changed the public hearing date, okay? And you and I can talk about setting up work sessions on it if you would. So that item will appear in front of us on May 24th. Next item in front of us is 9F4. Item 9F4, Ordinance AO 2016-42, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending the Anchorage Municipal Code, Section 17.05.0570 to provide for strict liability for violations of Title 17. I'll need a motion to introduce.
Move to introduce.
Well, hold on, Mr. Chairman. I believe Mr. Steele pulled this, and I'm not sure that he wants it introducced quite yet.
He doesn't want to, that's
So
right. I'm saying
I'd like to give him a
somebody
chance to
else
speak to that before the motion to introduce.
But we have to have a
takes
motion,
place.
then he can speak to it.
Well, no, if you get 3 motions, then it's not debatable. So I'd like to hear his reasoning for not introducing it tonight.
It's a personal issue. Go ahead, Mr. Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some problems with some of the wording. I think the resolution goes a little bit too far on a couple of things, giving deference to staff at the expense of the citizens of Anchorage. One example is item 2 on the back page, the removal of reasonably prevent. You take that out, and that infers unreasonable prevention. So that's one item. So there's some wording changes that need to happen, and I just have some concerns that it's going too far in giving the folks too much power.
I need 3 to introduce. Mr.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I guess my question is for Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele, are you willing to work on this issue with the Department of Law to address your concerns?
I am.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm fine with no motion, and we can just hold off on this if the rest of the body is amenable to that.
If anybody wants to introduce this, to take it forward, you can set a public hearing date out as far as you want. Right, we need to introduce it. Anybody want to do that? Takes three to introduce. We don't have anybody that wants to introduce it, so we'll let the administration bring it back and we'll try it again. Let's see. That completes, I think, everything we've got, Barbara. Me? What? Okay. Next item in front of us is item 11A. It's on page 6 of your agenda. Assembly Memorandum AM 210-2016, Anchorage Community Development Authority Board appointment of Terry D. Parks. That was pulled for a 10-day public comment period. I need a motion from the members.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion from anybody? If not, please vote. Item was approved. Is Mr. Parks here? Not here. Thank you for voting on it. Next item is item 11B, ordinance 2016-27, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly, amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 2.40 to provide for neighborhood responsibility planning for marijuana establishments. Ms. Sabowski, there's an S version on the addendum to the agenda.
On behalf of Ms. Domboski, I'll move the S version that she takes hers out of the recycling bin.
You moved that, Mr. Flynn?
I did.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Ms. Domboski, ma'am. But you're urging me to vote on it anyway? Yes.
So we did move the S version, right?
You moved the S version,
Okay,
yes.
great.
Mr. Flynn took care of that.
He did. He saved me. I was having a Costanza moment, pulling my stuff out of the trash. Okay, so Mr. Chairman, I want to first of all thank the Rules Committee for their work session on this, on their meeting on this particular ordinance. We had a robust discussion. Does everybody have the S version? Okay, I saw a little confusion down there. So we had a robust discussion on this particular item, and I wanted to make sure that all assembly members and the public's concerns were addressed. I think we've done that in this particular S version. If there's questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I don't think I need to rehash it. I think most of the assembly was there, so.
Thank you, ma'am. Question from assembly members? Okay, we've got Mr. Peterson, then Mr. Flynn. Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In our work session the other day, I made a suggestion that the legal department come up with a template for the memorandum of understanding so that the community councils wouldn't have to hire an attorney or try to talk an attorney into volunteering to write the memorandum of understanding. Has that been done?
Mr. Folsey, has that template been done? Do you remember Mr. Peterson brought that up? I think Erica was doing it, or Julia was. Julia, were you working on that?
Through the chair, Erica McConnell with the Community Development Department and Daryl Hess, Ombudsman, did perfect that, and it is included in the S version. It's an Exhibit B that's drafted right into the code, similar to the way that Exhibit A for the template on community council bylaws was drafted right into the code under a similar section.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Peterson? Anything else, sir? No, thank you. Mr. Flynn, sir?
Yeah, just a thank you to Ms. Domboski and Ms. Tucker for taking the feedback to heart. I think we've got some flexibility here. We don't want to be overly prescriptive to the community councils. We want them to operate in the manner that they are most comfortable, and this, I think, allows them that flexibility. So I appreciate it, and looking forward to moving it forward.
Thank you, sir. Other comments from assembly members? Not seeing any. Please vote. That was approved by the body. Thank you, Ms. Domboski. That was a good committee meeting we had, and this is good evidence of how the committee meetings work correctly. Thank you, ma'am. Let's see, we have...
Mr. Chairman, I don't see Ms. Holmes here. If she is,
I don't
I'd be
either, so I
willing
was
to
looking for
waive the rules to accept her public comment at this time, but since she isn't, I would suggest we go to our break.
Well, we take our dinner break now. Take our dinner break. If everybody would take their seats, please. We'll get this meeting started. Next item of our agenda is item 12A, Diane Holmes, regarding the need for members to improve communications to councils and other residents regarding MOA departments and assembly meetings and agendas. Diane? You got to push the button, Diane. And what you want to see is a light up.
Okay, good.
When it turns purple, the elevator opens and you fall, so watch it.
I'm under 3 minutes. After a year or two without any web communication with the planning department, we finally can be alerted when a rezone or plat is logged into that department. But unless we attend the hearings or waste staff time with emails and calls, which of course I do, we have to keep checking the web for the results. The decisions are eventually posted, but we never know when. Please reconfigure CityView so we can be kept abreast of the process of all cases. The agendas for this body, P&Z, HLB, and plating are also not available to be sent to our inboxes. In fact, I don't think the assembly agendas and documents, even in draft form, are available until the Friday before the meetings. Is that correct? So, do any of you know where residents look to find annual council CIP lists and when to look? Can you take a guess as to when HLB's annual work plan comes out for its very limited review, or even how to find it on the list of departments? I can tell you, it's not under HLB. With millions being spent on technology in the Muni, can't we figure out a way to alert residents well ahead of time when the text of ordinances and agendas are available? At least make it easy to find these things, maybe in one spot on the front page of the Muni website. And how about those list of Muni departments? Can't you at least cross-reference them to common names? Now, I know the answers to these questions because I've been around and I don't have a life, but I won't be here forever. And although my grandfather said if he couldn't take it with him, he wasn't going, I'm not going to be here forever. And younger folks, if they have an interest at all in these things, can't and shouldn't have to spend a lot of time searching. Now, please don't suggest that the FCC be the agent for alerting residents because you cut their budget to the bone and they don't even have a full-time person. And they can't react in a timely manner. Now, on a slightly different note, that of streamlining procedures, is there any reason why I should fill out the same form by hand on four different forms at the health department when I've initially signed in on the computer? How much does it cost to file these forms, or are they even filed? My immunizations are in a database that the health nurse can access, even when I've had a flu shot clear across town in my doctor's office. So why are we still using paper? And last, why doesn't the mayor's name appear in the employee search engine? Is he working for free?
Questions for Diane from Assembly members? Thank you, Ms. Holmes. Next item in front of us on our agenda is item 13A. That's ordinance AO 2016-28. Ms. Johnston, ma'am, do you want to announce what you're going to do with that?
Yes. I am going to move to postpone this till the April 26th meeting, so it will correspond with the 9F14 that was laid on the table this evening. If I could have a second. And the reason is the administration has been working with the developers on this, and basically they're working on a plat that they're going to take back to planning and zoning and bring back. But we also first need to address the fees of the rezoning.
The clerk advises me that the motion is not the correct item at this time because, Madam Clerk? Because the public hearing has not been closed. Public hearing this item is still open.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So do you intend to bring, I thought at one time you were going to postpone
Right. I was
this
going to,
indefinitely.
actually, I was going to postpone this indefinitely But the administration came up to me this evening before the meeting and asked if I could postpone it until April 26th so that the two items come up together on the same agenda.
Jennifer, the clerk brings up some real problems we've got because you had told the clerk and others that you were going to
Right.
this indefinitely, and we sent that message out to the public.
And I did too, and I mentioned this. But the problem is, and I understand that because that was my intention, was to postpone it indefinitely. And the only reason I've been asked to not do that with this item is their intention is to go back to planning and zoning with the administration and to have their fees, the administration is waiving their fees to take this back to planning and zoning. And their concern is if we don't have both ordinances in front of the new body on the 26th to address that something could go haywire, go sideways, and they just want to have the full packet there so that they would be available, and hopefully it will just be the item 9F14 that passes.
Okay, then what we're going to have to do is open the public hearing, ma'am. And Mr. Bowski?
Mr. Chair, I don't know that it's, I'm just going to chime in since we're all having a conversation, but I was just going to say, I don't think there really is any concern about the fact that maybe Ms. Johnston has told people that she's going to postpone it indefinitely, because as we all know, until it comes before the body, none of us can predict.
The clerk's office has.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so my point being is, no matter where the message is coming from, no one on this body or in the administration or anybody can predict what we're going to do. We can just say this is.
You're absolutely right with that. So we're just going to open the public hearing.
And I did in those emails say it was my intention.
Okay. So if anybody here wants to testify on AO 2016-28, please come forward, state your name, spell your last name, tell us what part of town you live in. You'll have 3 minutes. And then if, in fact, the administration is going to bring their version forward, you'll have 3 minutes on that one on the 26th. So, anybody wish to testify on this item, please come forward. You have to push the silver microphone button.
There we go.
There you go.
Hi there. My name is Bern Davis. I oppose this. I have read the Hillside District Plan. I don't believe that this, I have personally canvassed most of the neighborhood. The neighbors are unanimously against anything other than an R8. And I have probably talked to close to 100 people. I don't believe that the land is suitable. I think it violates the Hillside plan, and I have found no one that said don't develop it, but everybody says do it right. You know, do it as an R8 and make it right with the neighborhood. But absolutely nobody wants cluster housing. They don't want any kind of high density. It should be an R8. We're depending on the Hillside District Plan. That's what it's called for, and that's what we'd like to see. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Question from assembly members. Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Welcome to the meeting, sir.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, if we testify tonight, will we be able to testify on the 26th?
You can testify tonight and the 26th, because there's a separate document the administration has introduced. They'll be in front of us on the 26th.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Take your 3 minutes now, and on the 26th, you get 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, I'm going to reread what I had read last month, and this is kind of a surprise that we're having to do this for a second time and possibly a third.
Sir, I got a question. Did you already testify on this item? On this item? 28.
Last month, we talked, yes.
Last month?
Or on the last meeting. I'm not sure when it was. And you had told us if we testified then, we could testify this time as well.
just go ahead and take your 3 minutes. Yeah, actually, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, so go ahead.
Okay. Yes, so, all right, I'm going to have to skip down here. Okay, so people last month told you that we're concerned about our wells, we're concerned about our septic. The developers have conceded that there's bad soils for septic. The property drops 400 feet from one end to the other. There's glaciation. The roads aren't good. We're really questioning why we're having to deal with this still. We're all pretty surprised. The developers never came before Glen Elms Community Council to ask us about it. We never heard anything. They haven't provided proper notice. For the rezoning meetings, they were more than 30 days apart, and we never got mailed notices again. The signs haven't been updated regularly. I really question whether the developer's interested in following the correct process. It seems like there's some backdoor deals or something going on that we can't figure out. Is this really a public process? In addition, I'm going to ask the Assembly again, are you interested in subverting the original intent of the Hillside District Plan? Are you interested in allowing sprawl across the Muni? So if you vote yes on this, if you decide to continue it, it's an affirmation of both of those things. Yeah, all right, that's all. Thank you. My name's
We
Rob
need your
Brown.
name.
Rob Brown, B-R-O-W-N.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward.
My name is Ralph.
Welcome, sir.
My name is Ralph Warren, W-A-R-R-E-N. I've testified before on a lot of things going on here, and it's just puzzling as the devil that, you know, one of the things you guys asked them people for was the Corps Army engineers get involved about wetlands. As far as I know, you've never got an answer on that. Don't you go back and push them when they don't do stuff like that? I mean, they're not doing anything. They're just hoping they can wear us down, coming down and raising sand about it, you know? And it's really disturbing when one of your members will go in and pull and going to offer amendments to the plan that's there. Is she working for us or is she working for the developer? It's very concerning, I'll tell you that.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, item is, the other thing, Jennifer, what do you want to do, move to continue or what? We got one more? Go ahead, sir.
Hello, my name is Stephen Day. That's D-A-Y. I am part of the Mills family. My grandma owns the property, the 80 acres directly to the south of the property in question. And I have a message from her to read. I don't know if you know Elaine Mills, wife of the late Dr. William J. Mills. She's a longtime community member, and the property has been in the family since the 60s, I believe. And I can attest to its pristine nature and the amount of wetlands that are on it. Well, I'll read what she's got to say. I would like to express my strong disapproval of this rezoning. I fear how this large number of homes and additional infrastructure will affect the fragile wetlands that extend between the two properties. Rabbit Creek runs through my property, and I value the pristine and delicate nature of this particular part of Anchorage. I'm also uncomfortable with the large amount of houses being built uphill of my property and accessing the water table for wells. I would like to remind the Assembly of the unfavorable hydrological studies that have been done and the unanimous denial for rezoning by the Zoning Commission. One comment that was made by the Zoning Commission was that this was bad urban planning, as Anchorage should be focused more on urban density. Again, I'd like to strongly disapprove. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There are no questions from the body. Anybody else wish to testify on this item? Please come forward. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you, Carol Ashlock, Bonnie Lane Road. We've gone over a lot of things. I understand what Jennifer's looking at doing and what the other additional thing was. I think one of the things that, as I've related somewhat before to you, and you're good enough to give me a call on it, is how you're really looking at this clustering and not looking at the Hillside District Plan. Now, I know a very savvy attorney about understanding that. I know, a lot of you quite well, actually. So I know that you try to do due diligence. But if you look at the letter of the law on that, 15 to 20% of 14 houses is 3.4 houses. So that's one point I would make to the Assembly to take a look at and take a strong look at. You're so sold, some of you are on this cluster, but as one of the gentlemen last time said, and there are a number of other people here that aren't going to speak that are from that area, and of course they were all told to stay home because this was going to be rescinded, which is a problem. But to look at what that Hillside Development Plan says and why it says that. And I know that Ms. Johnson has been up there, but I don't know who else has been up there to look at the property. If there was ever a case of R8, this is it. This is it. 300-foot, 400-foot drop. That's without taking the wetland area away and the water all the time. We don't want to propose something we know is not going to happen anyway. There's a purpose in it. So I think it needs to really be re-examined. I think it should be rescinded, frankly. Find some other property. That's why this property was so cheap. So I've spent over $40,000 on Bonnie Lane Road alone. So I would ask to take a look at that, and then as an assembly, look at what are you doing with R8. You could even take a better R8 and look at doing this with the platting, but with this piece of land, are you kidding me? I don't understand it. I don't understand what this is about, what's really happening on this, and the purpose of that. Because as one of the older gentlemen, the homesteaders had said last time and the time before last, I think he had a 40-acre parcel, there's still 30 households. You can put it together in a septic, you can put it separate. It's still 30 households. And that's why Joan and Bern Priestley across the street can't even water their garden. There's not enough water there to support it. It's a problem with septic. The nitrates go up. So I would just ask the assembly members to really, really take a good hard look and look at what you're doing and what we're also setting, as a tone for what else we're doing in town, as well as that area. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to testify on this item?
Good evening. I'm Chris Alexander. I live on Spindlove, overlooking the property that's being discussed now. It seems to me like it's just a no-brainer. It's everybody against the developer. We're not against developing, but we do want it R8. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. Ms. Johnston?
As I said before, I move to postpone this until April 26th. And Mr. Evans has seconded me. And just to clear up, I had full intention of postponing this indefinitely, and I do apologize to the residents. The administration did come to me and suggest that we needed to have both these go forward the 26th. This is not my, to be honest with you, I do not have a horse in this game. There's people in administration that are working on this and they wanted some time, and I'm not going to stand in their way. So anyways, April 26th, and the crux of this, what will happen out of this is that it's going to go back in front of planning and zoning. So I'm sorry for the mix-up. I had no intention of doing this, but I do feel that I owed it to the administration when they came to me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Comments from assembly members? If not, please vote. Vote we postpone this item to the 26th of April. The item is postponed to the 26th of April. Next item in front of us. Is item 13B, ordinance 2016-34, an ordinance amending English Municipal Code, new code section 20.05.070, section 21.07.020, section 21.607.090, section 21.07.110, addressing specific issues identified during initial implementation of new Title 21, waiving Planning and Zoning Commission review from Assemblyman Dabowski. Public hearing on this item is now open.
Mr.
Anybody
Chairman?
wish to testify? Mr. Flynn.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, before we start.
In your S version?
Yeah, I just wanted to advise the audience that I apologize I wasn't able to get it published earlier, but I was working furiously today to promulgate an S version. And it's pretty simple to explain the differences. Basically, Section 1 is out. Section 2 stays in. Section 3 is out. And Section 4 stays in. And then finally, I've added a sunset clause for December 31 of this year. And I don't want to get into debate, and obviously the body can decide whether they think that's the right path to follow or not. My purpose in meeting with various constituencies was to help the building community move forward with the projects they already have on the books for this year, and then have these topics revisited as part of the normal process involving planning and zoning and so on and so forth. So if anyone wants to speak to the S version, and particularly if they have objections to the sections 2 and 4 that I intend to maintain in my version, I look forward to hearing that. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward, state your name, for the record, and spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. You'll have 3 minutes or longer if we have discussions for you. Welcome to the meeting, ma'am. You got to push the name
Got it.
down.
My name is Karen Kasich Michelson. I live at 3410 Balchin Drive on the west side of town. I'm a home designer and a home builder in the community, and have had numerous meetings with the design community, the people in this town that design all the houses that get built. And we are trying to go through Title 21 to vet out all of the issues that we have found that make it difficult to permit a set of drawings. I've had numerous meetings with not only designers and builders, but with staff, with assembly members in assembly work sessions, and I'm glad that we have a presentable ordinance tonight. We're in complete support of the 2 items that are left on the ordinance. But I would continue to ask you that the Assembly promised us, the home builders, the designers, the homeowners in the community, a fast-track method to get through the various items in Title 21. The meetings I've had with staff to date have been positive, and I just implore you to continue to press to vet these items through so that as we go through this potentially difficult year with the budget and the gas crisis, that the industry itself is not belabored even more. Thank you.
Question from Assembly members. Thank you, ma'am. There are no questions. Anybody else wish to testify? Welcome, sir.
My name is John Rankin. I'm a residential designer here in Anchorage of over 30 years experience. I've been specializing mostly in sloped houses on the hillside, many of them. Maybe some of you live in my houses, I don't know. I'm here, what I'm here to say is that in going over the Title 21, there are many things, especially on the slope lots, in some cases make it prohibitive. I illustrate one. I did a little illustration of one a very nice house. It's a flat-roofed house on building height, and this house couldn't be done. I showed a 23% slope here. The section that it refers to, the section that it refers to is it states in Title 21, Chapter 2107.020.3.1.ii states that at any given point, the height of the structure shall not exceed 25 feet above the original natural grade. Here's an example of a flat-roofed house. It's a walkout ranch. It does have a high inner part that couldn't be done. The verbiage there makes it almost impossible to do many of the houses you see up there, and especially the way they're establishing building height. I would offer my expertise of 30 years. I guess I could call myself an expert. I've designed hundreds of homes. And I would help out, be more than willing to help out to try to find a way to make this workable, because at this point, it's not workable. Thank you.
Questions? Mr. Dombowski has a question for you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Rankin, thank you for providing that illustration. We did use that in our work session the other day. Karen presented it in our work session, so it was very helpful. My question, I meant to bring pictures today up on Prominence Point, some of those houses. Have you built houses up there?
I designed about 30% of the subdivision.
Okay, so my understanding, and I've been told this by others, that about 90% of the homes in Prominence Point under today's Title 21 code, specifically because of issues like this, could not be built today. Is that correct?
This is Prominence Point.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
I just
many of them can, but there's more. Here's the point that I want to illustrate. This is for the homeowners. It's not for the industry. Example, you have people that have view lots that in some cases have invested $250,000 or more in a lot. And they have something they want to do on their house. They have an idea, a dream. Now, under this new Title 21, many of them won't be able to do it. In some cases, and this one in particular, it should be deleted from the code. It wasn't done correctly. I don't know who was consulted on this, but they sure didn't consult the people that do the work.
Thank you.
Mr. Honeman has a question, sir. Sir? Mr. Honeman?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Rankin, I'm going off of information I've received. I know some people, real good friends of mine, that actually own in Prominence Point.
Yes.
And you said you developed a good percentage of the neighborhood, about 30%.
A good, very, very big percentage of it, yes.
Have there been any issues, and I'm with you on the sense of what couldn't be built because of, I guess, the way that they're showing the listing under Title 21?
Yes, right.
The specific concern that I think people downstream from upper neighborhood, people previous to this issue, were discussing that, a change in zoning from R8 to R6 to allow more denser building on that lot, 88 acres, I think. In any event, my point is that if you're building on steep slopes, where does the drainage issues, the hydrology of drainage, because my understanding is some of the homes that were developed on Prominence Point actually created some issues, drainage issues downstream, at least initially in the first couple of years.
Well, so in most cases, if you have a slope, you have, except for the roof drainage, you have natural drainage anyway. You have to make a building pad. You have to, in these cases, if you've been up there probably many times, you have a slope. You have to develop a pad to build on. And you can't go over 10% on the driveway. So sometimes you have to compromise between the slope and where the house is going to go if it's got a basement. Drainage is already established by Mother Nature. Roof drainage is another issue where we set up drain fields around it. And typically speaking, a lot of times it's drained to daylight. That's pretty much been the established principle for eons. That's for roof drainage. But you have drainage already established. And we have restrictions on wetlands, etc. We try to keep that from being affected. We already, even by the last code, if you're close to a creek, you have to at that time, had to make it 25 feet. Now I believe it's up to 50 from a creek. Some lots will be unbuildable. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. There's another section of the code, Title 21, that's actually dealing with changing the way it is where there's a subdivision, or I guess you could say subdivision drainage plan, to now basically limiting it to a drainage plan to the site, to the actual building site. And, to me, I think that's where, are you aware that Prominence Point might have had drainage issues because of it was not done properly or someone didn't do it?
Yes, there's been one. In fact, I had to do a house last year to beat the new Title 21 because it wouldn't have been buildable. I did it on the old code. It's in Prominence Point. The drainage issues, typically speaking, happen with the builder, etc. I usually try to, when I'm designing a job, and most of us that do this, usually design the house, the structure, how it's going to work on the property, and the person building it or the homeowner will investigate those restrictions. So far, there hasn't been too many problems to my knowledge. If something's not done right, it's just flat not done right. No one's going to try to justify that. But the way this thing is now, sir, it really needs to be, reconsidered. And I will volunteer as much time as I can to help because I do the work.
Thank you.
Other questions? Anybody else wish to testify on this item? Please come forward. Anyone at all?
Diane Holmes. Section 1, regarding the large garages, this could make the residential areas appear as if they were commercial, if they dwarf the main residence. And if this is going to be eliminated, thank you. If Eagle River would like to have this, it's already in your comprehensive code, your plan, but don't vote for it for the rest of Anchorage. Steep slopes, you have to be kidding. Come on, guys. How many of you took our tour and remember these pictures? I'm reminding you of them. This is in Prominence Point. Yes, there are tremendous drainages in Prominence Point. Do you remember this? There's a reason why we have steep slope standards, although perhaps some tweaking can be in order, but you must not discount the problems with drainage. At your work session, you were told that some property owners couldn't build but one story on a lot that cost $100,000 or $200,000, but surely they were told these conditions by their realtor. When I buy stocks, I don't get any sort of conditions. The most disturbing part of this AO is Section 3 drainage. And the Rabbit Creek Council's letter lists the inaccuracies, and it is inaccurate. Please be advised that we have a drainage engineer on our council, and her comments should be valuable for this very detailed and scientific section. Again, Prominence Point has tremendous problems. Remember, Title 21 is for everybody, including those downstream. And I do hope that you finally got and have been able to read the council's excellent letter. Any questions?
Questions from assembly members? Mr. Honeman has a question. Mr. Honeman?
Diane, can we just reflect, can you bring this to the clerk so we can look at those? We'll leave them for you.
You want me to pass them from your side?
Give it to the clerk and we'll get it to everybody. Thank you, Diane. Any other questions, Mr. Honeman? Okay. No other questions, Diane. Thank you. Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Welcome to the meeting, sir.
Good evening. My name is Bob French, spelled like the language, and I live on Government Hill. While I support other commenters here that lowering the standards in Title 21 and changing the approval process and deleting the Planning and Zoning Commission review is a bad idea, wanted to comment on a different portion. This is the voters pamphlet that was passed out, and it was through the League of Women Voters. This is on the 2016 bond projects, and there are 10 drainage projects on this, on our bond that the taxpayers of the municipality paid for that total $5,050,000. I can't pretend to know the details of all of those 10 drainage projects, but I find it distressing to think that this ordinance is looking to reduce the requirements for engineered drainage systems at the same time that Anchorage taxpayers are being asked to pay over $5 million to fix drainage problems. I believe that allowing contractors and developers to cut corners now will certainly result in the public being asked to fix more problems in the future. We heard on the March 22nd Assembly meeting and then also just this evening about the rezoning of the 72 acres on the hillside, about all the drainage and the glaciation problems. Not hearing about not responding to the neighbors where they have these drainage problems. It means that the planning and zoning and the assembly are going to miss out on getting that local knowledge to help prevent problems instead of having to react to them in the future. The office manager of my office lives on Kantishna Drive in Eagle River. She had suffered several years with annual flooding in her basement due to the street being built basically on top of the underground creek of Meadow Creek. That, I could tell you that when she had 30 gallons a minute of water coming up through cracks in the floor, that was an emergency. The neighborhood is just now being rebuilt. There's a new drainage being installed to capture that water of Meadow Creek. But what we have is an example of a developer 30 years ago being allowed to just fill and pave over a creek over an underground stream. Now the entire municipality is paying for that. So I think that asking future public taxpayers to subsidize the private profits of contractors now is just plain wrong, and I urge you to vote against this.
Thank you, sir. Questions from assembly members? There don't appear to be any. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
For testimony. Welcome, Mr. Potter.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Assembly, my name is Tim Potter. I live in Midtown. Tonight, there's really two areas to talk about. One is the suggestion that all of these things are things that weren't necessarily taken into account during the Title 21 rewrite. And more than anybody in this town, I can say I coined the phrase the oops clause and passionately asked the Assembly and the Planning and Zoning Commission and all the committees that worked on Title 21 rewrite over 12 to 14 years that there were going to be unintended consequences that we would not discover until we actually started getting building permits or tried to do designs to take through the process to get a building permit. I would say that there are some unintended consequences in here, but there's a mixture. And be clear that there are some things that are being promoted as a quick fix, no big deal, that are a big deal, having to do with steep slopes. So quickly, I'd like to go through 2016-34 and just talk about some of the key issues. The topic of the garage being no greater than 50% of the principal structure, meaning the house, has been an issue for a long time. Most of the times that I've run into it, it was an issue when it was located on an airstrip development and they wanted to have a hangar with residential built into the hangar space. And the hangar floor and footprint was much bigger than the square footage of the house, and it was the right kind of development, a stupid code that didn't take into account the specifics of the use and who the users of that area were going to be. So I do think that there should be special dispensation for air park or airstrip type developments. If you're in a large rural area with large lots and you have a 20-acre parcel, do you really care if you have a 10,000 square foot shop on there? No, nobody will know it. None of the neighbors will know it. So I think there's a size of tract or size of lot that comes into play. When you get to the steep slope development, I really want to caution you that this is where we all find out that Mother Nature really does rule. Gravity still applies. And I'll use an example in Ms. Denboski's area, not to pick on her specifically tonight, but if you go up Eagle River Valley and you look at some of the very steep slopes that have been carved out to create large flat pads and driveways where they have absolutely butchered the terrain and the trees and the land and created some drainage problems. The issue is trying to create a lot so you could put a house on it and have a yard. If you want to build on a big flat lot, do it down on the big flat area of town, not up on the hillside. There is some reality to what's been talked about by some of the speakers tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, finish it up, Mr. Potter.
And that is that when you're building on a steep hillside, the way that the building height is now interpreted, you run into a problem of actually being able to fit a building on there and be suitable and buildable. Potter Creek subdivision in South Anchorage is a great example. In 1982 or 83, the area-wide rezoning was down there. It was zoned R3 with special limitations to keep it as more of a single-family type of development, but recognized it was on a steep slope. And the specific reason to do that was to try and get a 35-foot height. That way you could actually build a house that got to a grade at a driveway coming down off of your front yard and the road and had 1 story above and a basement so that you could actually fit a 2 or 3 story house on that lot. If we continue to work with what's done now, we will either have opposing forces that will look at creating big flat areas on steep hillsides, which is not good, or we can have a step down foundation down the hill. That's also an option, but look at how much more area you're tearing up than if you had a consolidated footprint for a story house. So we have these opposing forces that I don't think have really been considered by the code.
Mr. Potter, you're in a minute and a half over, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Holman, you have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Potter, I want to get specific if I could. You were addressing earlier the example in Ms. Denboski's neighborhood, and you might not have seen the pictures that Ms. Holmes had on Providence Point. I was reminded by one of my colleagues, not necessarily that it was the builder or the architect who designed, but perhaps maybe the subdivision developer or something. I guess I'm at a point where I've seen around this town communities that were, I'm sure, well-intentioned, but maybe with haste or somebody wasn't watching close enough. We're now, as Mr. French said, we're coming back in behind the scenes and fixing drainages, fixing roads. You know, some of them in my area of town, you know, they don't really know what's causing all of it, and they don't know what the proper fix is. And it's hydrology, I know, it's geology. Things are from the mountains sloping towards the inlet, and everything in between here and there is you know, depending on where your level of drainage is. So my concern is, in getting to the steep slopes, and I hear what you're saying, what would the suggested fix be? Would it be holding Title 21, or is there a suggestion you have to that?
I would send this steep lot and drainage-related issue back to a volunteer committee, and I guess I'll stand here as well and volunteer again for the 15th year in a row on Title 21 rewrite, that I'll be happy to participate because of the experience that I have dealing with the situation and a lot of the circumstances that come into play. So I'll be happy to volunteer more of my time, like other people have indicated, to do that. There does need to be a timeline to get this fixed because there are some consequences, but there are life safety related issues on the steep slope. If you put in a foundation, whether it's a multi-stepped or a very large retaining wall type of foundation, this suggests that all engineered foundations, that they're not necessary and you don't have to have anybody look at it. Holy smokes, if you've got drainage in a hillside and you've got a big flat concrete wall that's a dam, you build up hydrostatic pressure and you could push that foundation right off the mountain. You know, that's not what we want to do. This is the type of situation, it's a special lot and there's special requirements that should go into place. We should, when a subdivision is done, there should be a master framework drainage plan for that subdivision, and then all builders that build in there should abide by that plan and not work to bastardize it, as often happens. So if everybody fits their piece of Lego into the pattern, the drainage should work and should work forever. And that's what needs to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. Are there no other questions? Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to testify on this item? Please come forward.
My name is Chuck Holman, H-O-M-A-N. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Assembly members. I'm a remodeling contractor, and I do major additions and major remodels. And this weekend is the Anchorage Home Show at the Alaska Airlines Center. And I always have a booth. I've had it for the past 25 years. And one of the biggest things people come in is they want to build a garage addition. And one of the first things I ask is where they live. And if they're in R1, R2, R3 zoning, the next question is how big is your house? If they say 1,600 square feet and they got a 600 square foot garage, they're fairly limited on what they can build. And quite often people come in and they want to have a 1,100 square foot, 1,200 square foot garage. But if you have a 1,200 square foot garage, you got to have a 2,400 square foot house. And I did a garage addition a few years ago, and I got turned down for my permit. And it was turned down for being over 50%. And I got the permit, and I told the homeowner, you got to get rid of your storage shed in order to build this garage. And his answer was, I would have built a bigger house if I had known that. And I've also given proposals to people that had a 1,600 square foot garage or house. They wanted to build a 1,100 square foot garage. I ended up giving a proposal to 200 square foot addition so that they could build a 900 square foot garage. And the reason they want to do this is to park their toys inside the garage, their snowmobiles, their four-wheelers. They're subject to being stolen in the weather. And also, people have hobbies. I was at a home just a week ago. Their garage is full of woodworking tools. And I told the homeowner, I said, you do furniture making? He said, no, that's my wife. That's her hobby. And, if you have a hobby that requires you making a mess, you can't do it in your family room. But our Title 21 says, no, you can't have that hobby. If you want to build a greenhouse, you can't build that greenhouse. I was just turned down for a detached garage and a greenhouse on the hillside because it exceeded 5% of the lot coverage in R9 zone. Under the old Title 21, a 2-acre lot had a 30% lot coverage. It is now 5%. And so we had to eliminate the greenhouse. And so there's a big impact with this, and I really was sad to see you guys take that out of the ordinance tonight. On this slope block, we've got a shortage of land in town, and what's left is the difficult lots, and we need to make it so that the builders and developers can build on those lots. So we've got a land shortage here, so thank you.
Thank you. There are no questions, sir. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. My name is Adam Lees, that's L-E-E-S. I live on Joanne Circle in South Anchorage. I'm coming to speak as an individual tonight. And to remind you, there's a saying, at least that my government teacher taught me way back in high school, that a good law done badly is bad. And I can't speak very greatly to the specifics in the engineering, but I can say that these proposals are big. They affect every aspect of development all across the municipality, and especially in my neighborhoods in the hillside. Drainage has frozen our roads over, heaved them all of the ground, caused houses to collapse. These things are not done smallly, and these are big proposals. The potential for unintended consequences is awesome. They need careful consideration. There's no reason that this ordinance, as it's proposed, needs to be passed on. It's not urgent. And considering the magnitude of the changes, it does need a thorough and open public process. Even if this is a perfectly good thing, just rushing it gives it the appearance that there's something to hide here. And a good idea being marred like that is awful. But even more so, in the hillside, we know we live in a very unique part of the Anchorage Bowl. It's like nowhere else, and I would, with respect to everyone else who does not live there, I would not pick any other part of town. It's amazing. And my neighbors, they care. They're up here. They're out here. Our community council is amazingly active. Our whole district comes out to vote on everything. And our whole area came to vote on a district plan brought on by decades and centuries of cumulative local knowledge that dealt with drainage, steep slopes, everything that's in this title, everything before you. Follow that Hillside District Plan. It's recent. The people who wrote it are still active, and it's a great source of knowledge, but it needs to be respected. Those are the people that knew the technical and they knew the history. Those are the experts you need to consult. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There are no questions. Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Ron Thompson. Work for Scope Engineering. I kind of have a unique approach. For 22 years, I enforced these laws, wrote these laws, wrote all types of things with regard to municipal government, building construction, not so much in the zoning arena, but more in the building side of things. And so I have a unique perspective now. In the last 9 months, I've worked for homeowners, I work for builders, I work for contractors, I work for developers, I work for all aspects of people. I have probably about 100 permits going at any one time right now that I deal with all these aspects. I also am the co-chair on AHBA for Government Affairs, and I was tasked, obviously, to be on Home Builders group when these items were discussed. I think several of these items have been taken out of context completely, and so I want to try to clear those up real quick, because the drainage issue that is talking about being taken off the table, the only reason it was put in is so it doesn't go into single-family development permitting. It's not currently there now. It hasn't been currently in now. You draw arrows on a builder. The drainage issues are solved at the subdivision stage. Right before the lots are subdivided, all the drainage has to be done, all it has to be handled. What we wanted to do is not all of a sudden, one day you walk in with a permit and somebody reads the code differently and says, hey, drainage plan is now required on individual lots. The drainage plans, by terminology, a drainage plan is a very large, very complex, huge document that costs thousands and thousands upwards to get completed. In subdivisions, that's a major part of the expense. No big deal, they cover it. Builders take individual lots after that and do the drainage per those plans. What we're saying here was just to get rid of the plan and make it clear that it wasn't required for single-family permitting. The 50% lot coverage, my house is probably right on the verge. I mean, I have a 3-story house. The whole first story is a garage. I have a living space above it, and then I have a space above it with an open area. That's more than 50% of that garage. Up until January 1st of this year, it can be done. It can be done by lot coverage. It can be done all in certain zoning areas, not in every area, but certain zoning areas. If you read the Class A and the Class B requirements, there's all kinds of requirements there for lot coverage and all of those things. This was to try to clarify that on an R6 lot, acre and a half, that you could happen to, I've got, there's one builder or one designer that I work for, Karen Cushman, that she has 10 people waiting to try to build a garage because they want to put their motorhome in it. They want to put their toys in it, and they're now empty nesters. They want a smaller house, but a bigger garage. And the restrictions as they are may, it's fine if it goes back to planning and zoning, if it gets handled quickly and it's back here in a couple weeks. That's the issue. So with that, I'm glad the window issue was taken care of and that you want to put that back in.
Ron, your time is up, sir. Let me ask Mr. Bowski.
Thank you. One of the comments that I wanted you to speak to, Ron, since you were the building official for so long, my understanding when we're talking about removing some of the aspects of steep slope design, there's this notion out there that there's still not structural design requirements. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. The issue here is you have two titles that deal with this. Title 21 is the land use side of things, and all of a sudden this code section, they're throwing in and saying you have to do all this engineering. It's already in Title 23. Title 23 is the building side, the structural, the engineering. You have to go through all of that. Steep slots have special requirements, special geotech reports required, all seismic zones have to be handled differently. What I was trying to do when we put this together was clarify that let's not have it in two codes and have it maybe conflicting. Take it out of one, leave it with the structural engineers and the geotech engineers that handle it in Title 23. Leave it there. Take it out of Title 21, and there's no reason for it.
So my point was, even though we're in this particular ordinance, the recommendation is to take it out of Title 21. Those engineering requirements, all those design requirements, all those safety features are still in Title 23.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, they're in Title 23.
Is that all, Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll take this opportunity to thank you for your many years as a building official. But my question is, did you just say that you wrote this document?
I volunteered in a home builder meeting that both the administration, the assembly, and home builders were in. Because I had had many years of writing ordinances, I just volunteered to help document, to try to get the sections correctly and show what could come in, what could come out.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions from assembly members? Thank you, Mr. Thompson. No other questions. Anyone else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Anyone at all? Welcome to the meeting, sir.
Thank you. My name is Bob Kiner, K-E-I-N-E-R. I'm a homeowner up off of Huffman Road. I searched for a number of years for a lot with a house on it that was big enough to raise a family in, that was in a neighborhood that didn't have restrictive covenants, and finally found one a couple years ago. And now I want to build a shop to store motorcycles, snow machines, woodworking equipment, metalworking equipment, just to be able to enjoy that as a hobby. And now, reading this, I'm not able to build a structure of sufficient size. Even though I have a 43,000 square foot lot, I already have 1,000 square foot of garage attached to the house and a storage shed. Now I'm limited to less than 1,000 square feet, which essentially is a small two-car garage that I could build externally of this. My neighbor right behind me and several other houses in the neighborhood already have a standard 40 foot by 60 foot, 2,400 square foot shop built on them. Many of them you can't even see from the road due to the nature of the trees and the topography of the area. So I would ask that the item A be added back in. The other thing that strikes me as interesting about the Title 21 as it is now is that while garages are specifically excluded from this as being, limited to 5% of my total lot area, there's another aspect that you could build what they call a workshop or a tool shed that has the same requirements but does not subtract out the existing garage that I have. I could also, according to the new code, build roughly a barn that would be 4,300 square feet and have large animals on the lot, but I couldn't have a garage to keep my snow machines and motorcycles in. So I guess I might have to get some horses or something, I don't know. Thank you very much.
Question from assembly members. Thank you for testifying, sir. Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Flynn.
I move the S version of 2016-34.
Second.
And Mr. Chairman, just
Mr. Flynn.
One more time, I'll explain the changes for those trying to follow along here. The S version deletes the original section 1, which is the garage issue. Sorry. The gentleman just testified. It maintains the proposed change to steep slope development. That's section 2. It deletes section 3, which is the I'm sorry? The windows issue, but keeps section 4, which is residential design standards, and then it sunsets the ordinance at the end of this year. And just to speak to my motivation here, As I said, I met with various constituencies, and I asked some people in the home building community, what do you absolutely need to have to keep the projects that you have on the books moving forward this year? And these sections 2 and 4 were the ones that they felt they really needed. I think that there's reasonable minds can disagree as to whether these are need to be postponed for enforcement long term. Reasonable minds can disagree whether sections 1 and 3 should have been included. My intent with adding the sunset clause is that we give the building community a chance to move forward what they have on the books this year, but make it clear to them that we expect to have some constructive dialogue with the department, with planning and zoning. I know Mr. Potter likes the oops clause, but I think that these are pretty substantive issues, and we do need to be very thoughtful about working through the process on them. And so this is sort of my we'll call it semi-oops clause proposal. I hope I've found the right balance and submit it for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hall, we have the S version in front of us, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make a point of a issue that came up when I was chair of the Assembly, when we appointed a committee that spent a lot of time looking at public testimony and audience participation, and they came back with a recommendation that anytime an S version come before us, such as this, that it be delayed for 2 weeks for the public to be able to have an opportunity to review it. I understand the importance, the fact that this is extremely time sensitive, but even with the changes that Mr. Flynn is making, even members of the body, it's tough to sit here, read it this evening, and make sure that we've dotted I's and crossed T's. The Rules Committee then adopted the report that came from that committee that said when we had an S version, we would delay it for 2 weeks and allow testimony on it at that time. So I genuinely think that's something that needs to be given consideration on this particular document. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dembowski, ma'am, we have the S version in front of us.
Mr. Flynn actually wants to talk to that point.
Yeah, and I appreciate
Mr. Flynn.
Mr. Hall, you make a valid point. And I thought very carefully about how I approached this. I could have simply put forward 4 amendments that would accomplish the same thing that the S version does. It's not substantially changing the document other than it's simply removing pieces. But I felt an S version would be cleaner just for review of the members. If you would be more comfortable with moving the original version and then amending it, I'd be willing to do that. I think it would be harder to interpret at the end of the day, and that's why I pursued it in this manner.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Ms. Dembowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I had to ask the question about the S version, and I was told the changes were not substantial because they were just deleting. There's 2 amendments to delete, basically. So that's the question that I was asked and answered, Mr. Hall. But I do want to talk to a couple of things, and I want to thank the body and all those that participated in the work session as well as the committee meeting. The first thing I'm going to say, and I've said this before, there's this narrative out there, and I heard it tonight, that somehow we're subsidizing the profits of contractors. Give me a break. I mean, seriously. What we're trying to do is we instituted a code that we told the community. We knew, as Mr. Potter said, the oops clause. I mean, nobody up here shuddered when they heard that because everybody knows exactly what he meant because we've heard it so many times. There was no testing done of this code. We just went forward and implemented, and then all of a sudden we realized there's unintended consequences. And after I'm done speaking, I will walk around and show everybody the pictures I have on my phone, and I've already emailed them to the clerk, of houses in Prominence Point that can't be built today. They're beautiful homes that cannot be built because of this, of the 20%, 30% design. That's an unintended consequence. And so just because the Assembly is holding up to their word and actually getting something done in a reasonable amount of time does not mean we're bypassing public process. This was publicly introduced. The public was invited. P&Z members were participated. Members of the building community and the architectural community participated in committee meetings. And then a month later, now here we are at public testimony. So the point is we're doing everything exactly as code tells us we can do it. And it's been a process to try to basically help homeowners and save this year's building season. The fact of the matter is a couple of the items in here, and I think though I'm not happy about it, my number one issue personally is the garages, because I look at my house and I have a 20,000+ square foot lot. I'm not looking to build a garage, but the fact is my house is only 1,500 square feet. You take out the garage, so I could build a 500 square foot garage. I mean, that's ridiculous. And so my point is, and some will say, well, do whatever for Eagle River, but when I ran into this last year, only 2 or so of the properties of the 8 or so that I ran into were in Eagle River. So if you think for a second this is not going to impact your communities, it absolutely is. Now, with that said, I really do appreciate Mr. Flynn's attempt to find a balance. And I think he's probably right. The 2 biggest things to the impediment of people being able to build the homes that they want to build this year are probably the steep slope design, the 20-30%, and it's probably the window issue, as we extensively went over in the work session. With that said, I just want to remind people there's a difference between the 20-30% design paragraph and the drainage paragraph. In Mr. Flynn's ordinance, he basically took out the drainage portion that I put in here, and that paragraph was meant for clarification. That paragraph, even if it stayed in, it's not going to eliminate the need for a drainage plan. I mean, you have to still give a plot plan when you apply for you still have to apply. It does not eliminate it. That's that's completely mischaracterizing reality. And so my point here, again, it's just trying to come up with a reasonable balance. Now, again, do I like your sunset clause? No, I don't. I'll just tell you that right now. I still think this is a problem. But my hope is, as we've now had this discussion and we've talked about some of the biggest issues that are a problem, now hopefully we can come together and have a long-term solution for next year and beyond, because I can tell you, and this is something that others haven't discussed, but when this ordinance was introduced probably about 2 weeks ago, so it had been out there a little while, I had a former member of the Planning and Zoning Commission call me when he heard this was introduced. And his comments to me were, Amy, Planning and Zoning, he's like, I was on the commission at the time. He's like, my whole point was we recommended this stay in the new Title 21, what you're trying to do, and it was at a work session. The administration, or the planning department at the time, Mr. Weaver, who was the director, recommended these changes be taken out. And so essentially, what Planning and Zoning had recommended us doing before, the department changed in a work session. And so this whole ordinance right here would basically go back to what Planning and Zoning originally recommended. See, that's the point of history, and actually going to the meetings and stepping back and taking a full view.
Mr. Muscat, to interrupt you, but I still got 4 members that need to talk.
That's fine, but Mr. Chair, I feel like we've done a great job with this. I think, like I said, I'm not done with these garages, because I think it is an issue. And maybe we'll just get it in Chugach Eagle River, but it is the bright part of the municipality.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Haldeman.
I'll keep my comments brief. I understand that in Title 23 and the differences in the building versus what's in the land use in Title 21. Title 21 was, as Mr. Potter said, has been worked on since the Anchorage 2020 comprehensive plan was brought through with, I think Ms. Silcraig was the actual one of the planners for the municipality way back when. And I remember the community conversations that were going on then and what should our city look like. So we're not fully adopted. I mean, most of it is implemented, and we've been making changes, and we knew we would. So I have no qualms with making adjustments. It looks like it may go, if I believe it will, we will, if it's postponed, I won't be on the body to be able to make any adjustments here, but I just caution the body that as you're making these adjustments, you're not going to ever get it right, but I believe a reasoned approach would be better conversations with subject matter experts, and I no offense to any of my colleagues up here, I don't really know anybody that's that keyed in on this. Maybe Mr. Starr, who does some building works, but even that is, he'll admit he gets to a certain point and then it's beyond him too. So we do have to listen to the subject matter experts, and even members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, volunteers that are willing to step forward. A lot of them do have experience and expertise, and no slight to them, but they may not have all the answers either. I don't think anyone does, and that's the key. So I'm willing to move forward if we're going to take this change tonight. If we want to postpone it, good luck to the rest of you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start out with thanking Mr. Flynn for his attempt to find some balance. And I want to say to Mr. Domboski, I understand and appreciate your passion to move this forward. And by no means is it my intent to hold up the building community, not now, not ever. But let's not forget all the emails that we got from community councils and resolutions asking us to send this to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I mean, tons of them. And now we have before us an ordinance, a substitute ordinance that was laid on the table this evening. And I can't imagine how many emails we're going to get by the time we're home this evening, because most of them haven't seen it. With that said, I think that it's prudent and responsible for this body to postpone this, and at least to the meeting of the 26th, and to get it right the first time, and then move on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So your motion's to delay this to the 26th?
Move to postpone action until the 26th of April.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded by Mr. Peterson. The issue in front of us is, shall we postpone action on this to the 26th? Comments from assembly members?
Yeah.
Ms. Domboski?
Thank you. I appreciate your comments, Ms. Gray Jackson. You are a lover of process, as am I. But again, I go back to these are not substantial changes. It's deleting a couple of sections, yes. But with that said, I think, again, every member who's sitting on this body right now has heard all these arguments. We've gone through work sessions, committee meetings. Everybody knows it. They understand it. I do not believe these changes are substantial, as I was advised earlier. Therefore, I don't believe a delay is warranted. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, on requested delay?
I appreciate the motion, and what I would encourage is, if that motion doesn't pass, that you have a 5-minute at ease, because it would appear that Mr. Schuette and administration, even with what we've got here, has an issue on one point that needs to be addressed, and you might be able to do that with a 5-minute at ease. But I think it is a perfect example of why, when we do things like this, sometimes it's easy to have a oops in the midst of it. So I'm not sure it wouldn't hurt to take a 5-minute at ease and let that discussion take place, and then we can vote on the motion to delay if that's needed. Thank you.
Mr. Hall, I think we will take a 5-minute at ease, and then we'll vote on this motion to deal with it on the 26th. We'll take a 5-minute at ease, Madam Clerk. Please take your seats. We'll continue where we were before. We have in front of us an amendment from Ms. Gray Jackson, seconded by Mr. Peterson, to delay this item until the 26th of the month. Any other comments on that, Mr. Evans? Comments on that? Okay. Mr. Flynn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I understand the concern that was raised by Mr. Hall, and I think I can address it relatively simply. And Mr. Potter, well, Mr. Hall brought it to our attention. If Ms. Gray Jackson and Mr. Peterson would briefly withdraw their motion, I'll explain, and if they're willing to take it up, great, and if they're not, we'll pick it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you just, before we withdraw a motion, could you tell us what your issue
so
is?
we talked about section 2 of the original remaining of the S version. It starts on page 2, line 12, and it runs to page 3, line 43. The first part of this deals with height requirements. That's 3I, and there doesn't seem to be any concern about deletion of that language. The second part, which begins on line 39 of page 2, 4F, is the geotechnical piece that Mr. Potter spoke to, the concern about drainage building up behind a foundation and so on and so forth. And so the concern voiced to me is they would like that language to stay in. So if Ms. Gray Jackson and Mr. Peterson are willing to let me do so, I would propose an amendment that essentially just deletes the bracket on line 42 and the bracket on page 3, line 43, so that geotech piece stays in Title 21. I hope that's clear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Flynn. So my question is, does your amendment take into consideration the concerns that Mr. Hall brought up that the administration had?
That's my understanding. I won't speak for Mr. Schutte. I'll let him speak to that if you would like him to respond.
Mr. Hall, administration.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Flynn, can you please repeat where you'd like to see brackets deleted and re-added?
It would be on page 2, line 42, through page 3 on line 43. So that language would come back into Title 21, would remain in Title 21.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Flynn, I do believe that if we understand your intent, that the correct deletion should be line 47, the first open bracket, and then all the way through the top of page 4, line 3, the corresponding closed bracket.
Different line numbers.
Well, it might be.
Mr. Flynn, do you know when we talk about making sausage on the fly?
I do understand. I am actually very clear.
Usually you're one saying don't do it.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. The line numbers were incorrect on our copy, so you followed along. You are correct. Please proceed.
I actually try to know what I'm doing. So I leave it to Ms. Gray Jackson as to whether she
Mr.
wishes
Chairman,
to respond.
if I may, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one comment, okay? I am still remain adamant about the citizens in this community and their concerns, and the fact that they haven't had an opportunity to see the document that was laid on the table this evening. But for the sake of compromise, I withdraw my motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Peterson, you withdraw your second? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I would move.
Let's get your amendment.
To delete the bracket.
Now on the S version or the original?
We're on the S version. That's the version that was moved. I would move to delete the bracket on page 2, line 42, and the closing bracket on page 3, line 43, which means that section would remain in code.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Does everybody know what we're doing? Any objection to that amendment? Not seeing an objection, Mr. Flynn, that amendment's adopted by the body. Okay, we have in front of us 2016-34S as amended. Any other comments from Assembly members before we vote? Okay. Mr. Schutte, do you understand what we're doing right now? Okay. Just want to make sure you're with us. Please vote. The vote was 9-1. That is approved by the body. That is the S version as amended. Next item in front of us is item 13C, ordinance. This is on page 7. Ordinance AO 2016-35, an ordinance regarding the measuring of separation distances between marijuana establishments and protected land uses in the Chugach Eagle River and waiving Planning and Zoning Commission review. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, current for the record, and spell your last name if you would. Tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body? Ms. Dombowski.
Move to approve.
Second.
Ms. Dombowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, marijuana is back in front of us again. This is truly a housekeeping item.
You and marijuana.
I know, I can't help it. This is truly a housekeeping item. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. I know we don't like laid on the table, but I took some advice from Ms. Carrie Jackson, and even though this is very simple, I wanted to put an AM in the record, so I did draft one today. But, yep, this is just, like I said, just clarification.
Okay. Discussion from Assembly members. Please vote. That is approved. The vote was 9-2.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir?
Before we begin 14 item, I wasn't here after the break. I don't know, we have a few high school students that are here visiting tonight. A few of them have left. Could we get the folks that are remaining in the audience to get on record?
Absolutely. If you're in a high school or student to high school, come forward and talk to us. We need to know what high school you go to.
Give us your name.
Otherwise, if we signed your name, we'll call your teacher and tell it's not valid.
Just make sure that red button, that red light's showing on the mic. Just push the little silver button at the bottom of it. And just leave it
There you
on
go.
when
You
it's-
got it.
Come on down. Everybody come on down.
Tell us your name and what school you go to.
I go to Diamond High School. My name is Christian Cost.
Welcome to the meeting, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Callie Clark, and I go to Diamond High School.
Great.
My name is Bradley Cross, and I go to Diamond High School.
Good.
Hello, my name is Ki-Sung Kang, and I too go to Diamond High School.
It's good to see Diamond High School people who use the Chugach Eagle River.
My name is Fortessa Fazlio, and I go to Diamond High School.
My name is Alicia Palmer, and I also go to Diamond.
My name is Megan Novak, and I also go to Diamond High School.
Well, thanks for being at our meeting. Next item in front of us is on page 7, item 14A, ordinance AO 2016-39, ordinance of the English Municipal Assembly, amending English Municipal Code, section 3.30.172, to reinstate subsections deleted in error. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, current for the record, spell your last name. Let us know what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing none, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Discussion from Assembly members. Please vote. That is approved by the body. Next item in front of us is item 14B, Resolution AR 2016-68, resolution approving labor agreement IAFF 2016-02 between the municipality of Anchorage International Association of Firefighters Local 1264 IAFF regarding staffing in the four-person fire apparatus. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your last name and spell your last name for the record, if you would. And there's an S version with it. The clerk shows me an S version. That's AR 2016-68S. So there's an S version to it. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing say no, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve. The S version.
You moved the S version. Thank you, sir. Mr. Bowski, your lights on?
Thank
Mr.
you.
Bowski.
Thank you. I have a couple questions for the chief if he has a moment.
Was that a safety jump, Gene?
Don't worry, chief. I follow upstairs.
Well, they have the warning tape there now.
We would have had it on the record had you broken anything.
Hey, chief. I just have a couple questions. So, what this is allowing you is flexibility to not have to reduce your foreman engine crews.
Yes, it is. It's the result of a 42% increase in the amount of medical transports we've had over the past 15 years. We have 9 full-time MICUs, mobile intensive care units, but that's insufficient to keep up with the medical's demands that we see now in our city. So we propose to add 2 BLS units, basic life support units, at no net cost to the city. In order to do that, we had to reconfigure the resources that we have distributed around the stations and on the different equipment. In working with the IAFF, they agreed for 1 year to reduce the number of 4-packs from 8 to 5, which gives us the bodies to staff the 2 ambulances, and then it gives us a year to come up with a full implementation plan, excuse me, of how we will fully staff the 11 medic units, as well as return to the 8 4-packs.
Okay, so you probably know where I'm going, so I'm going to go right on into it. Where are the BLS units going to be housed?
Medic 81 and Medic 82 will actually be housed at Station 1.
Okay, that's a good choice. Where are you anticipating the 4-packs? Where are you going to take those from?
I haven't seen that plan.
The reason I ask is because Station 11 is a 4-pack,
Yep.
and they're 20, 30 minutes away from everybody else's help. So every time you take somebody from Station 11, it's one less fireman we have out there.
I wouldn't think it's Station 11.
Okay.
The high concentration of fire stations that we have in Anchorage itself allows us to very, very quickly, within seconds, if not minutes, get the actual staffing that we need at any location because of the ability to get there. So a first-in engine company with only 3 people would be supplemented almost instantaneously by additional resources.
So with the guys that are going to be shifted, I'm assuming, you take a guy from a 4-pack and you put him on a BLS unit. With those guys, are you running into any, are you TDYing them, or how are you functionally going to be able to do that?
Well, actually, we charge the 12 BCs, the battalion chiefs within the city, to analyze this process or this proposal in great depth. BLS unit implementation has been tried twice before, and it wasn't successful. And just today, I've got a 50-page PowerPoint document that I reviewed with the with the battalion chiefs that outlines in excruciating detail exactly how all of that is going to be done. We're going to finalize this document here in another day or 2. We're actually having a press release tomorrow announcing the additional 2 units, and this document will be available for your review.
That would be great, because that's the one question I'll hear from a lot of my friends that are...
They actually have a rotation proposed,
and it would result, I believe the number is every 54 days, a fireman might be allocated to either Medic 1 or Medic 82.
For
So
like,
as we
for like a
distribute-
cycle?
Yeah.
Okay.
So as we distribute this around and through the city, it won't be very intensive to any one individual or any one station.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mr. Peterson has a question. Sir, Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering, the problems we were having with the overdoses of spice, is that still continuing or is it slowed down any?
It's slowed, yes, sir. It's slowed down considerably over the winter months. We're not really sure what to attribute that to. Could have been just the cold or people moving inside and nobody witnesses them. But through March, the percent has been only about 6%. And you recall in October, we were well over 20%. So it's definitely moving in the right direction, but every day we have a handful of spice overdoses. So 6% is probably something we're settled in on.
So, Mr. Peterson?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. There are no other questions.
Thank you.
Any comments from Assembly members? When you say no, and we're going to vote on this item, please vote.
Yes.
Item is approved. He left a tacit approval for you to vote for him. He's gone. Next item in front is item 13C, ordinance AO 2016-35, an ordinance regarding the measuring of separation distances between marijuana establishments and protected land uses. Actually, we're not on 13. Sorry, I'm moving backwards. Let's try 14C. I know I was supposed to go to C. 14C, Resolution AR, I'm so used to marijuana and you. Resolution AR 2016-84, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, appropriating $2,097,476 as contribution from the 2016 Maintenance and Operations Department.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This is to purchase vehicles and equipment. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly and spell your last name if you would. Here you can see no one. Public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move approval.
Discussion from Assembly members. Doesn't appear to be any. Please vote. Item was approved by the body. Next item in front of us is item 14D, Resolution 2016-85, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $339,375 from Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities.
Waive reading.
This is AMAT's Anchorage Area-Wide Trails Rehabilitation Project. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Hearing and saying no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move approval.
Discussion from Assembly members. Please vote. Go ahead, Amy. Grab him. That was approved.
I thought that was Mr. Flynn.
Next item is item 14E, Resolution AR 2016-88, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, appropriating one tender not to exceed $9,025,000 of federal aviation.
Waive reading.
FAA. This is the 2016 Merrill Field Airport capital improvement. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record, and spell your last name. Anyone involved? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Please vote. Item is approved unanimously. We're now down to page 8 on the agenda. Resolution AR 2016-86, a resolution adopting the draft 2016 Housing and Community Development Annual HCDA Action Plan, which consists application to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development HUD for the Community Development Block Grant. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record and spell your last name. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish?
Move to approve.
Moving to second discussion from assembly members. Mr. Flynn, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, I don't know if anybody had a chance to really read through the document that accompanied this, the action plan, but this is a way that one of the methods we use for dealing with homelessness and folks who struggle to meet their rental payments and so on and so forth. And, I appreciate it. I think it's relatively well thought out. However, I think we need to spend a little more time on this as we develop the next year's plan and start thinking a little, none of these are bad grants, but it's kind of the same old, and we need to start thinking a little bit more creatively of how we're allocating these dollars to make a little more impact. It's probably a bigger project than I can take on or figure out, but we need to get some different minds at the table and work this a little bit differently moving forward. Again, there's nothing bad in it.
Same results every year.
Yeah, so I recommend it for approval, and just let's think a little more creatively as we develop the next one. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Any other comments from assembly members? Please vote. The item was approved by the body. Next item in front of us is item 14G, Resolution AR 2016-103, Resolution of the English Municipal Assembly approving alcoholic special land use permit for package store license number 5488 for O'Malley Ale House and Pizza LLC, doing business as Fire Truck.
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly and spell your last name. Welcome to the meeting.
My name's Diane Thompson, and I'm one of the owners of Fire Tap. I'm just mostly here to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions from assembly members? Don't appear to be any, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to testify on this item, please come forward. Anyone all hearing and say none, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from assembly members. Please vote. Item is approved. Thanks for being here with us. Next item in front of us is item 14H, Ordinance AO 2016-37, and ordinance amending H Municipal Code, Section 14.70.190 regarding false alarm charges. Anchorage Fire Department. Item is now open for public testimony. Anybody wishing to discuss this item with us, come forward. Give us your name, spell your last name, if you would, please. Hearing and saying no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Discussion from assembly members. Mr. Holdeman.
Yes, and to specifically the fire chief, it's just an issue that you might want to put on the radar screen for, it might be ripe for a discussion internally. It came to our discussion, Mr. Traney, Ms. Gray-Jackson, myself, met with folks at the UAA, and particularly their housing areas, they get a number of alarms that are either heat or smoke or steam, and the alarms are not actually false. They're placed at lower ceilings. They're not normal 8-foot ceilings for the first thing, and then there's several smoke detectors, and they're not necessarily just smoke. They also cover steam and heat. And so if someone's lady is using a flat iron, I guess a guy could too, using a flat iron, curling iron, and some of the hair happens to get hot, it creates a kind of a heat to it or whatever. Anyway, oftentimes, you know, other representatives of the university will get there and then say it's not really a fire. There's not even an open flame, and so it's just more of an issue. So just something to put on the radar, Chief, if you could.
Through the chair, Mr. Honeman, this provision is not intended to put a fine on a false alarm when the alarm works as intended. So you can picture a steam emission creating an alarm situation. Even though it's not a fire, the fire alarm did what it was supposed to do, as opposed to an electrician working on the alarm system and he accidentally triggers it and we launch a full response. In that case, there would be the penalty, but we're going to reset the clock every year.
Yes. Thank you.
Chief? Thank you, Chief. There are no other questions. The comments from assembly members? If not, please vote. Ms. Gray Jackson, you need to vote, ma'am. That item was approved. Next item in front of us is item 14I, ordinance AO 2016-31, ordinance amending the zoning map and approving the zoning from RO Residential Office District to B3 General Business District.
Waive reading.
Of the West. Thank you. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Welcome to the meeting, sir.
Yes, my name is Robert Auth, spelled A-U-T-H. I'm a resident of Spenard, former chair of the Spenard Community Council. This property is within the Spenard Community Council. It was on the council's agenda in December, and the council voted against this rezone, primarily because the petitioner did not appear at the meeting. I testified about this at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting in January and gave the same report to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they were concerned and voted in favor of it. So my concern is that the petitioner has never been to the council on this matter. The council did vote against it, but not with full information, obviously. The other issue is the Planning and Zoning Commission, I think, put in a provision that restricted the development on this site to the restaurant that's being proposed, but the proposed resolution doesn't have any restrictions. It's just a rezone to B3, and since apparently the petitioner has just recently bought the property, they could do something other than develop it. So the problem is procedural, and the problem is substantive. It's also taking out residentially zoned property. RO is a transitional zoning, and this is a transitional area between B3 and further west into along Northern Lights, which is mostly residential. So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Question from assembly members. Mr. Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is your concern just the fact that they had not presented it and had not told you what they're doing at the council?
That's part of it, but the other concern is, as I said, the development itself and whether it's just going to be rezoned to B3, which would allow any development. There's no restriction on what's going to be developed. I understood from the packet and from the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing that they wanted to put in a Panda Express. I don't have an objection to a Panda Express per se. It's about, it's also the rezone. We're continuing, at least the Planning and Zoning Commission is lately continuing to rezone residential to commercial, and I know this is only partially residential, but it's something.
Is that all, Mr. Steele? If there are no other questions, sir, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else wish to testify on this issue? Welcome to the meeting.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Wilber, W-I-L-B-E-R, and I'm representing CFT and Panda Express restaurants on this development. And Mr. Oth was at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and this project did move forward under the old code, Title 21, was properly public noticed, and we did follow the process and correct procedures under old Title 21. This is a nominal 7,000 square foot development. Panda Express restaurant will anchor one end of it. There are also 3 tenant spaces. It will likely be retail and additional restaurant. This is not a spec development. If we had a rezone today and a building permit, we could break ground tomorrow. This project is moving forward. It will be the 3rd Panda Express restaurant in, I guess, the Mat-Su borough in Anchorage, the 2nd one in Anchorage, one in the borough, and they are also looking at additional sites in Eagle River. So this is a real project. I also just wanted to address the housing. This parcel has been vacant for over 11 years. It is right next to Carr's Safeway, which also recently had a gas station put in. To say that this would move to residential next door to a gas station is a bit of a stretch. It hasn't done it in 11 years. It's not going to do it now. And it's also a bit of an island. It's divided by Northern Lights and Benson. There are 26,000 cars that go by this site a day. This is not a great place for residential development. Also, if you look at the 2012 commercial land assessment that was done for this district, for the West Anchorage district, it recognizes this is the highest density residential area in Anchorage, and it also only has 2.5% of commercial development. And it acknowledges that there will be a shortage of commercial development west of Minnesota. So this is needed. This is part of a town center. We're just asking for another acre to be added to the existing town center. It's designed to serve local residential, capture trips that are going home and coming back from work. And we believe it's properly scaled and that this is a good, simple rezone. It's flat, it's level, there's no slopes, there's no drainage. So with that, I will leave it to answer any questions. And the next thing on your agenda is also the West Anchorage District Plan Amendment that would go with this. I will not get up and testify again because I would say the same thing unless you have additional questions. So thank you for your time.
Mr. Steele has a question. Mr. Steele?
Yeah, my question on that is the parking's going to be on the car side along the front of that, or how is it going to be configured?
We actually meet the new Title 21 for parking on our own site.
Okay. And the access is that road that runs along from Benson to Northern Lights right in?
Correct. And when that access was put in, it actually considered the development of this parcel, and there are 2 existing driveway cuts, and those will remain as is.
Have you guys owned it for some time? I mean, you bought it for this purpose?
This project started in 2014. Negotiating a land deal with Safeway was problematic, so we first approached the planning department in 2014 about this rezone. The property did not close until October of 2015, at which time we immediately submitted our rezone application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman has a question. Mr. Honeman?
Quick question. Was right where the gas station is, just to the east of this location proposed, wasn't that the old Dairy Queen that was there?
It was a Dairy Queen at one time, and then it was also a child care center. It has never been an office, and it has never been residential.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, there don't appear any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify on this item? Please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moving to second, discussion from assembly members. See no discussion, we're voting. Please vote. That is approved by the body. Next item in front of us. So that lot's been empty for 11 years. Be nice to see something on there. Item 14J, ordinance AO 2016-32. Ordinance amending the West Anchorage District Plan Land-Based Plan Map Exhibit 4-1A and the Turnagain's
Waive reading.
land use. Thank you. Public testimony is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. Jason McCurdy for the record. You can't be here for this.
Oh, I am. This is Kathy Gleason, Kathy with a C, Gleason, and I'm a Turnagain resident, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the council, just myself. But in the context of talking about the West Anchorage Plan and amendments to it, I'm not speaking about this particular parcel per se. As Bob Oth noticed, I told you this is within Spenard Community Council boundaries, but it's very close to Turnagain, and 99.9% of Turnagans drive past through this area on Western Lights to get to our homes every day. And so it's a big issue for Turnagain as far as anything that amends the West Anchorage District Plan. It might be a really good idea, and I'll strongly recommend that Turnagain Community Council, and actually any community council within the West Anchorage District Plan boundaries, be formally and public noticed when amendments to that plan come up, like this one, which Turnagain wasn't notified on. That doesn't mean I have anything against what's being proposed in this particular lot. I think it's just I'm taking this opportunity to make a bigger and broader recommendation that amendments to that West Anchorage District Plan be noticed to all the councils within that boundary, regardless of the location of the specific proposal. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. No questions. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
It's moved and seconded. Discussion from assembly members. If not, please vote. Mr. Flynn, do you want to call your vote on this item to the clerk? Yes. Did you get that, Madam Clerk? Mr. Steele? Need you to vote too.
Let's start over, please. I'm sorry about
that.
I've got it. I'm sorry, Ms. Gray Jackson, could you please vote again? Mr. Evans? Yes. Oh, you're not, you can't vote? That's it, sorry. Okay. Oh, got it. Thank you.
That was approved by the body.
We did that a couple of times. Vote often.
But you see what we were voting on? It was not this one. It's like 34 again. Special orders are none. Unfinished agenda, there is none. Audience participation. Is there anybody wish to address the assembly on any item? Welcome, sir. Push your button on there.
Sorry?
There you go.
Okay. My name's Ed Larrivee, Larriv is the victory, EE, I'm the second. I was noticing that Petro trucks and their, I believe they're tandem gasoline trucks or oil trucks, whatever they are, they're going through our neighborhood. And, you know, there's people on Falker Street that walk up and down and up and down. and these trucks, they're double-decker, or they're tandem, rather, and they're coming through a residential neighborhood, and they're going to the convenience store to refuel their pumps. And it's tearing up the roads on 46th Street. And I was wondering if you all knew about this. And they usually come, I'd say at night, or in the evening. And it's kind of scary. I don't think these trucks will blow up. I don't think they will blow up. But, you got condos on one side and apartments on the other side. They're coming right through. You know where the Taco Bell is off of Tudor? Well, that's where Fulker Street is, and they're turning right in. They're wearing out that street. They're wearing down the 46th Street. There's big potholes there. And I don't think this is really a good thing. Is there any question?
There don't appear to be questions. Thank you. I know what you're talking about. I know where the area's at.
Yeah. And, not that these trucks would blow up, but if they did, they'd take out quite a few people.
A few blocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Take care. Anybody else wish to testify on anything on item 17? It's just a time for you to come and talk to us if you want to.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
I'd like, if you would, one of the students might be brave enough to ask what they thought about the meeting tonight.
It's his last meeting that he's officially here for the whole meeting. Humor him. Do you guys have anything you want to talk to us about? Okay, Paul, I tried. Okay. We've closed that section of the agenda down. We're now down to assembly comments. Since this is probably the last time we're going to have it, let's go through it. Paul?
Well, I'm not sure if we get one last thing on the night of
You
certification.
might, but get it out now.
Well, I want to thank the chief of police. He gave a nice card thanking him for time on the Public Safety Committee. And mixed emotions. I'll miss you guys. I know I didn't term out per se. I could have run for one more term. But the people of East Anchorage had a very exciting and energizing two candidates, really. And it was a very well done race. And so I congratulate those who won the election on April 5th and those that didn't win. I thought, all in all, very good choices for the election on April 5th. And I'm excited to see how vote by mail goes on in 2017. So I may not join you on Tuesday nights, but who knows? I may drop by if there's nothing else better going on in my life. And but thank you again for my opportunity to serve with each and every one of you. And I hope I get a chance to talk a few more minutes on the 17th. I'll filibuster the room if you like. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for correcting 19.
Mr. Steele. Ms. Dabowski.
I was just going to compliment the students. I feel a little, let's just say lacking, because my Eagle Chugach students that were here, they all skipped out. But look, Diamond stayed.
Did you sign the paper before that?
I did. But, what do you do? But thank you guys for staying, because you guys should get extra credit.
Mr. Flynn, sir.
Unlike Mr. Honeman, I wish to offer condolences to those who won their elections, but we'll see him next week.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
No, thank you, Mr.
Mr. Evans? Mr. Peterson?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad you gave us just a minute here. I wanted to make sure everyone knew that April is also Autism Awareness Month. And I actually have a little knowledge about autism. I managed to get a piece of legislation passed through the state legislature that helped autistic children and their families. And so they will be doing their March for Autism, Walk for Autism later this month. So if you feel like going walking for autism, you can check it out on their website and sign up and help them out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Mr. Peterson? Mr. Peterson, I think some of us wish you were still down there, given the fact that the biggest thing that passed yesterday in Juneau was to declare a day for wild salmon. Forget the fact that we're $4 billion in debt. They have to declare a day for wild salmon. Ms. Johnston.
Actually, I have a request as far as next Tuesday. I hope that once we certify the election, that the process of the three of us leaving is relatively short. And because I know the folks that got elected, they're anxious, they want to get up here, and I hope we don't have the long goodbyes that we've had in the past. We just sort of, you know.
They're actually building scaffolding outside. We're taking care of it for you when you leave. Mr. Hall.
Yes, I too would echo what Ms. Johnson said. I believe next Tuesday night is about the ones that did win the election. That's their evening, and I had just as soon certify the election and leave gracefully. I would share with you, it's been a delight serving with each and every one of you. I think the Assembly is an example that should be held up to the legislature, and that we're a body that works together. We each debate, we compromise, and I think majority of the time we produce good legislation. It's frustrating when you read about a piece of legislation that has a great deal of importance to individuals being locked in a committee by one individual at the legislative area.
Is that something doing with smoking?
Well, it could be, but there's other things doing with marijuana that's tied up in the same ways, and I think there's a real disservice done there. So I've been proud to be a part of this particular body, and I don't know that I were leaving the legislature this year that I would be able to make that statement. So thank you. It's been a delight.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hall. It's been great working with everybody on here. I worked with 35 people, and you guys are great. Thank you very much. And I find it interesting that Delta is going to stop flying into Juneau. Maybe we get Alaska, we could shut the place down. Anyway, so I make a motion to adjourn. We'll get out of here.
So moved.
We're adjourned.